Some frozen burgers sitting in American freezers right now aren't just low quality, they've been pulled from shelves because they had pieces of metal inside. Real solid metal. And that's not the worst one. Too many frozen patties today are hiding behind pretty labels like all natural or Angus beef. But what you're really getting is overly processed meat soaked in sodium, glued together with textured protein, and blasted with artificial smoke. It's cheap for a reason, but not the reason you think. When something marketed as just simple beef starts tasting like beef-flavored rubber, it's not just disappointing. It feels like a slap in the face. So if you've been relying on frozen burgers to save time or money, this is the video you didn't know you needed. I'm about to show you 5 names to toss out of your freezer right now, and 2 that surprisingly still do the job right. You deserve to know exactly what you're biting into. First up are the frozen burgers that don't even deserve to be called food. Number 1. Good & Gather all-natural beef patties. We need to talk about what's hiding behind the label all-natural on Good & Gather beef patties, because what it promises versus what it delivers are miles apart. This isn't about complaints people make when the burger burns or shrinks. It's about what you don't see ingredients, nutrition value, those things you assume are acceptable. And yet these patties don't even meet that. First, ingredients. When something says beef patties, all natural, many assume no weird additives, minimal processing, maybe even grass-fed, but that's not claimed. What is claimed is 85% lean, 15% fat beef. That sounds okay for lower price tiers. But what is missing any brag about organic, no hormones, no steroids, nothing special? It doesn't say livestock fed on better feed, or that the beef is from farms with cleaner practices. It's generic. For a product marketed as simple, it fails to give you simple that's reliable. Second, nutrition. People on fixed budgets expect at least a basic nutritional standard, decent protein, moderate fat, cholesterol, salt levels that don't make your heart jump the next morning. These patties are protein okay for what they are, but fat and sodium creep higher than many expect. The saturated fat portion plus overall cholesterol content means this isn't a harmless convenience food. It carries risk, especially if you eat frozen patties often. The nutritional profile doesn't compensate with any benefits like micronutrients or extras, no visible iron boost, no added minerals, no claim of better vitamins or low sodium version. You get beef, yes, but beef stripped of what makes it worth choosing. Third, expected value versus actual. Many buy Good & Gather because it's cheaper, because Target is everywhere, because you want a quick patty for burgers without spending too much. But even for its low price, consumers report that the flavor is unmemorable, bland, and the beef tastes so weak that you almost feel you paid just for texture. People say they have to drown it in sauces or add salts or seasonings to make it tolerable. That extra cost in spices, thyme, condiments, that adds up. When the base product forces you to cover its weaknesses just to enjoy a burger, the savings start to feel like losses. Fourth, feedback and ratings. Across supermarket reviews, people give this product very low stars, particularly hating how thin the beef flavor is, or how the label seems to promise more than the patty delivers. Verified purchasers say used to be better, and these seem worse lately, meaning that something changed, maybe supply, maybe processing. The disappointment isn't just about taste. It's about trust. For many, although they did not expect gourmet, they did expect beef, like flavor, and at least a basic chew, a basic beef note. That expectation isn't met. Here's what you should hold this one accountable for: misleading impression nutrition that leans too heavy on risk form without compensating positives value that ends up costing more because you mask it with extras. If your standard is it should taste like beef, have modest salt, feed me without guilt, this brand misses. So keep this in mind, Good & Gather. All natural beef patties are a warning sign. They show how frozen burgers can use trustworthy wording and still deliver something you'll regret buying. If you pull one from your freezer, you deserve to know for what you're spending. This isn't enough to write home about. Number 2. Market side 100% Angus beef patties. Let's pull up the truth behind the Angus label on market side patties. This one misleads by under-delivering in places you might not check. I found items you'll want to know if you shop smart. Nutrition facts show one market side Angus burger patty carries about 380 calories, 30 grams total fat, of which saturated fat is 12 grams. Protein lands around 25 grams. Sodium sits near 100 milligrams. Not terrible per se, but when you compare what you pay and what you get, the gaps start to hurt. That thick Angus label makes you expect rich fat, marbling a fuller beef flavor, maybe even something that feels sturdy in the mouth. But the fat here isn't enough to bring that beefy punch. The saturated fat is high enough to raise red flags for folks with heart concerns. And for those eating frozen burgers regularly, sodium adds up fast. 100 milligrams per patty isn't instantly harmful, but over time becomes part of a bigger health load. Then there's ingredient transparency. 100% Angus doesn't specify feeding style, hormone status, pasture grazing, or animal welfare. Those are the details that make Angus meaningful beyond marketing. Without them, Angus becomes just a breed name slapped on packaging. You might expect better feeding practices, slower growth, or cleaner inputs, but those aren't claimed here. For buyers who value those aspects, the promise feels hollow. Cost versus return. This Angus patty costs more than many generic frozen beef options, yet flavor tests and reviews suggest it doesn't outperform its cheaper counterparts in a convincing way. In taste trials, it ranks lower because the beef flavor is muted unless heavy seasoning or sauces are added. Some reviewers describe a gamey aftertaste or stale frozen beef flavor creeping in things you pay extra to avoid not discover. The worst of it, paying extra for better beef, but getting a nutritional profile that looks average plus flavor deficits and ingredient ambiguity. For someone with fixed income or trying to eat somewhat better, this kind of mismatch stings. It feels like being charged as though you got Angus Prime, but eating Angus Basic. If you care about what Angus is supposed to signal, more beef depth, more traceable sourcing, better health trade-offs, then this patty often doesn't meet even minimal expectations. It makes you stop trusting the label and start checking the fine print every time. This market-side Angus burger isn't the worst frozen patty on the shelf, but it is one of the most frustrating. It charges you premium dollars and plays premium packaging while delivering ordinary nutrition and muted beef presence. If you reach for this, ask whether you want just Angus or Angus that earns the name. If it fails in flavor, nutrition, or ingredient value, then you're better off going with something cheaper that does those things decently. Number 3, Cattleman's Ranch Texas BBQ Burger. Opening this box of Cattleman's Ranch Texas BBQ patties feels promising. Texas BBQ cheddar, onions, peppers. But when you check the nutrition label and compare what you're swallowing versus what you were sold, there's a discrepancy that cuts deeper than flavor. On pricing, this burger pack of 6 patties weighs 1/3 of a pound. Each sells at about $8.50 per box, which works out to roughly $1.41 per burger. For what you pay, the expectations are elevated. You think, I want something flavorful, maybe decent cheese, smoky barbecue style. You expect that kind of value. But let's look at what you get. Each patty contains 34 grams total fat, 12 grams saturated fat. Cholesterol around 90 milligrams. Sodium clocks in at 720 milligrams. Those are high numbers. The sodium alone hits around 30% of daily value in many diets. For someone buying frozen burgers weekly or feeding a household, those numbers matter. Not just taste, but impact on blood pressure, on weight, on what your doctor might frown upon. Then check ingredients. The box boasts cheddar cheese, onions, roasted poblano peppers, and smoke flavor. Sounds good until you realize that while cheese adds flavor, it also adds fat and sodium. Smoke flavor, which may be natural or artificial, often just adds a potent shortcut for taste, but also hides what the beef itself lacks. The onions and peppers are present, but in many reviews, people say they barely notice the poblano. The onions don't distinguish themselves over all the seasoning and salt. You get more BBQ flavor presence than tomato and onion freshness. What's worse, nutritional value versus what you sacrifice. The protein is decent, but many calories and fat come with trade-offs. For people managing cholesterol or trying to eat more balanced food, this burger makes it harder. When regular frozen beef patties offer simpler nutrition, this one demands you accept more risk for taste. For a frozen burger, that's a heavy ask. User reviews bring another layer. Many mention they needed to rinse the urge to add more seasoning or sauce just to make the burger palatable. Some say after the second bite, salt overload kicks in. Others say the smoke flavor increases in intensity in later bites, overshadowing the rest. One reviewer called it memorable, but in a bad way. Salt first flavor blends second beef, sometimes trailing behind. And that matters because part of buying Texas BBQ is hoping the BBQ flavor amplifies the beef, not smothers it. Also overlooked impact of these numbers over time. Calories from fat high, saturated fat high sodium, these don't just hit once. If this burger becomes a regular part of your freezer rotation, those numbers accumulate. They increase risk for issues people worry about: pressure, cholesterol, inflammation. The kind of thing you think you can dodge by eating less fast food. But frozen burger labeled BBQ can slide into that same category. Here's a tighter comparison. The unseasoned version of the same brand has much lower sodium per patty. It doesn't have the flavor shortcuts. It doesn't come with BBQ expectations. It performs more predictably on the nutrition scale. When you consider what you gain versus what you give up, the unseasoned often gives more value for less compromise. Bottom line, Cattleman's Ranch Texas BBQ burger is attractive because of its flavor promises. But what you see in the label comes paired with a heavy cost in fat, saturated fat sodium. If your priority is something more than just trigger flavor, something steady over time, this burger often fails that check. For occasional treat, maybe it works. But for regular freezer staple, the trade-offs are too big. Number 4, U.S. Foods Veggie Burgers. Veggie burgers are supposed to be the safe detour from meat risks, but this one takes a darker turn. U.S. Foods Chef's Line. Veggie 3-grain burgers were recalled in large volume because bolts were found inside the patties. That's a foreign object risk most folks never expect from plant-based meatless or grain labels. The recall numbered almost 75,000 cases. The products included 3-grain burger, black bean, among others. A bolt in a veggie burger isn't an ingredient glitch. It's a failure of safety controls that people rely on, especially when they skip meat for health cost or principled reasons. Let's unpack why this hits differently. First, when someone picks a veggie burger, they often assume lower saturated fat, lower cholesterol, fewer risks tied to animal sourcing. But with this product, although there's zero meat, there's still cholesterol-raising fats from oil sodium that rivals meat-based patties and the risk of physical harm from metal. One bite wrong crunch might damage teeth, throat, or worse. That is not usually the risk people consider when they reach for plant-based. Next, ingredient transparency fails here. The 3-grain black bean tags make you imagine real whole grains. Real beans may be organic, may be additive minimal. But the recall shows that product integrity breaks down at manufacturing when the process lets bolts into a food item. The label doesn't warn the packaging doesn't show recall until after damage could happen. People pay for healthy alternative, but expose themselves to a risk nobody wants. Then there's nutritional trade-off. Veggie burgers often carry less protein per dollar, so people add toppings or sauces to make them more satisfying. But here, because safety is compromised, there's more going on than just topping up flavor. The extra condiments meant to mask blandness or dryness add sugar, extra fat, sodium. If a veggie burger is both bland and risky, the cost isn't just money, it's health, peace of mind. Also, the trust factor tilts badly. When a product is recalled for metallic parts, people question every vegetarian or vegan item they encounter. Part of choosing veganing is banking on industries that claim they care more about safety, less about maximizing output through shortcuts. A bolt in a burger box punctures that claim. It erodes trust in all the labels: plant-based, vegan, organic, non-meat. That erosion feeds anxiety. Is what I buy next safe? Am I chewing anything foreign? This kind of recall has broader ripple effects. Stores pull products, people check, lot codes, refunds seek. But immediate risk lingers: choking hazards, internal damage, even infection if metal causes injury. For older people, people with dental issues, those risks loom larger. Costs may include going to dentist, doctor, unexpected bills. Catching up on those bills can hit someone living on fixed income hard. A product with veggie branding should add comfort, not concern. When you buy U.S. Foods Chef's Line veggie burgers, you expect health benefit or at least no harm beyond nutritional trade-offs. Finding something like a bolt inside shifts the conversation from "is this good enough?" to "is this safe at all?" That message should matter more than flavor, more than price. For folks using veggie burgers as lower cost option or as part of healthier diet plans, This recall should serve as warning, examine lot codes, check recall alerts, and perhaps reduce trust until quality and safety practices are clearly documented. If packaging or marketing doesn't address safety beyond meatless buyer beware. US Foods veggie burger recall doesn't just mark one product. It reveals risks built in behind the labels many rely on without inspection. If you reach for that veggie box, you deserve to know it won't hurt you physically and nutritionally. If either isn't assured, maybe you look elsewhere or pay more for guarantees. Number 5, Kansas City Steak Company Classic Steak Burgers. When a frozen burger box says Classic Steak Burgers and comes from a name like Kansas City Steak Company, many assume you're getting top-tier meat premium sourcing, maybe something you'd feel proud to serve. But often what you pay isn't matched by what you get, and the differences are in places most shoppers don't check. One big reveal is packaging and portion size. Reviewers mention that these steak burgers are thick and hefty at first glance, but frozen patties tend to lose shape, sometimes shrink during cooking. The raw weight per burger looks impressive, yet after thawing and grilling the yield often drops notably. That means you pay for volume, not necessarily for what ends up on your plate. Another issue is misleading expectations about beef quality. The label says corn-fed premium ground beef, which suggests a certain breed of cattle raised for taste, full flavor, decent fat. But no further detail is given about fat content, breed-specific marbling hormone, or antibiotic-free practices. When labels lean vague premium ground beef without specifying quality grades, you end up trusting you're paying for more than just buzzwords. Cost per burger matters especially when you're shopping on fixed income or trying to stretch every dollar. Though these steak burgers are rated highly by some users for taste and juiciness, the price is significantly higher than many regular frozen beef patties. Some buyers argue that once you factor in how often you need to buy replacements or add sauces, toppings, extras, the premium cost per bite pushes these burgers into the same range as mid-priced restaurant burgers. Then there's the health trade-off everyone ignores. These classic steak burgers don't hide salt or saturated fat, they deliver plenty. For someone who eats frozen burgers, frequently high levels of saturated fat and sodium start to matter. If one burger delivers more than a quarter of daily saturated fat limits or high sodium load, the fact that it tastes better doesn't erase long-term risk. Also, packaging and shipping impact value. Some customers note that packaging is bulky, insulated, and intended for direct order freshness. That means shipping costs, dry ice insulation included in price, but those get masked. When items move through grocery or chain retail, the cost markup for shipping, packaging, and storage adds invisibly. You pay extra partly for how it gets to you, not just what it is. This burger walks a tight line better than basic frozen patties in some flavor tests. Sometimes juicy, sometimes satisfying. But for folks looking for real value, taste, nutrition, price, transparency, it often misses more than it hits. You may get occasional wins, but regular use means you'll see the cracks portion, loss, price drag, vague beef quality, and unwanted fat sodium burden. If you pick this kind expecting steakhouse hints, you might feel let down. If you pick it knowing its flaws, maybe it's okay for occasional grilling. But don't settle thinking classic or steak burger are magic words guaranteeing value. You deserve frozen beef that earns those labels. After everything we've just uncovered, it's easy to feel like frozen burgers are a lost cause. But before you swear off frozen burgers forever, hold on. Not every box on that shelf is a trap. Some brands have figured out how to deliver the basics without cutting corners or loading your meal with hidden risks. Number 1, Bubba Burger Original. Let's look at what Bubba Burger Original gets right, because in a sea of frozen patties that overpromise, this one quietly delivers real simplicity and transparency. Ingredient list is short, one ingredient, only beef chuck. No fillers, no preservatives, no artificial additives. When a product says that, many expect at least that, but this actually holds up. For people watching labels for junk, this is huge. If you want beef without mystery stuff, this is one of the few frozen options that doesn't bury you under a laundry list of extras. Nutrition facts give clarity, not confusion. 1. Bubba patty has 420 calories. Total fat is 35 grams, saturated fat 15 grams, cholesterol 110 milligrams. Protein 25 grams. Sodium just 85 milligrams. See that low sodium number. For regular frozen burgers, sodium often blows past 200 or 300 milligrams easily. Here you're not getting sodium overload. That difference matters if you use frozen burgers often. It lowers cumulative risk. Fat content is high, but comes from fat naturally present in beef chuck, not from added fat or heavy seasoning. If you're balancing flavor and health concern, this gives you room to add your own seasoning grill marks, maybe top with something fresh instead of masking everything. The beef chuck origin also means you get a cut, known for decent flavor and quality, compared to generic ground beef blends. Value-wise, this burger costs more than ultra-cheap mass patties, but less than many branded premium Angus or BBQ flavored ones. What you're paying extra for here is meat quality and ingredient honesty. The trade-off works fewer hidden costs in sauces, flavor enhancers, or trying to salvage flavor lost in cheap patties. You don't have to compensate so much with toppings, so overall cost per satisfying bite may go down. Some people assume grass-fed or organic are the only ways to be safe. Bubba doesn't claim those things, but it also doesn't pretend them. That honesty counts. For many folks who just want a burger from freezer that isn't full of food scientist tricks, knowing what the beef is matters more than flashy label claims. If your freezer has a Bubba original, use it when you want something reliable. Cook from frozen, respect heat, don't cover it with heavy sauce as a crutch. It won't cure every burger disappointment, but this one gets many fundamentals right. Real beef, clear label, modest sodium protein that delivers. For anyone tired of being let down by frozen options that promise too much, this is one you can trust more. Number 2, Kirkland Signature Grass-Fed Beef Patties. Moving into safer territory, Kirkland Signature grass-fed beef patties show what frozen burgers can do right. This is one where the label, the nutrition, and ingredient clarity actually line up enough to count. First thing, fat ratio. These patties are 80% lean and 20% fat. That balance matters because 20% fat gives enough juiciness while avoiding the over-greasy overload of so many BBQ or flavored patties. If you want beef flavor without needing to mask it with sauce, this ratio helps. Then ingredient simplicity and claims. Kirkland states these patties are raised without antibiotics or hormones and are grass-fed. For people worrying about what the cows ate, what was pumped into them that matters. It doesn't claim pasture-raised in detail, but grass-fed means the diet is more natural than grain-fed feedlot beef. The fewer the extra claims missing, the fewer opportunities for marketing tricks. More of what you're getting. Also pricing value. A 5-pound bag contains 15 1/3 pound patties. Price is about $24. That comes out near $1.60 per patty, compared to many flavored or premium market frozen burgers. That price isn't wildly high for something grass-fed with no added fillers. You're paying for beef, so more honest sourcing rather than sauces and flavor enhancers. Nutrition snapshot that people do not always check. Each of these patties has about 380 calories, 0 grams of carbohydrate, and around 26 grams of protein. Sodium is much lower here than most flavored patties since it is unseasoned. For anyone keeping an eye on salt intake or watching long-term health, that reduction in sodium exposure adds up. Now for imperfections, because they are unseasoned, flavor can be muted. The beef taste is there but not loud. If you want bold flavor, you'll need to add seasoning. Also, grass-fed beef tends to cook faster. Overcooking can dry it out if you don't watch closely. But those are trade-offs many are willing to accept for fewer hidden risks. What makes this safer option meaningful is not just what it avoids, filler, smoke flavor, false BBQ tags, but what it delivers: reliably real beef, clear sourcing, and nutrition numbers that are transparent. If you freeze several options in your freezer, this one tends to stand out when you want something simple and cleaner. If you're someone who buys frozen burgers often, or watching health markers, or just tired of being let down by boxes that promise more than they deliver, Kirkland Grass-Fed is one of the few where your expectations align more closely with reality. Use it when you want peace of mind, something you can cook without checking every clause, every seasoning, every label. You walk into a store hoping for convenience. You walk out with boxes that might be selling you more fiction than food. The frozen burger aisle isn't just about dinner anymore, it's a test of how much you're willing to accept, how much trust you still have left. But today, maybe that changes. Now you know what's worth freezing, and what's better left behind. So next time you're standing in front of that freezer door, you'll know exactly which names are safe to grab, and which ones to never touch again.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.